each person has such a different story, but at the end of the day, it rips your heart out and your gut and your everything that nobody can be prepared and nobody's prepared for the after.
Hey, welcome to The Day After, the podcast where we explore stories of grief and resilience. Today we have Kelly joining us. She's a true inspiration, having faced the heartbreaking loss of her brother to brain cancer. But Kelly didn't let her grief define her. Instead, she and her family channeled their pain into creating Stash Strong, a nonprofit organization that supports families dealing with brain cancer. In this episode, Kelly opens up about the challenges and triumphs of building Stash Strong and caring for her brother. Don't forget, if you want to show your support for the show and our guest, you can subscribe at thedayafter.com/plus. Okay, go get your favorite kombucha and a pair of headphones, curl up, and enjoy this episode.
I lost my oldest brother in 2019 to brain cancer. He was diagnosed Labor Day weekend, September 2017. And it was just something, you're out celebrating, you're enjoying life, extended weekend, everything like that. And my other brother, Colin, calls me and says, "Do you know what medication GJ's on?" And I get a call and I'm just kind of like, in the grocery store, I remember like, what are you talking about? What medication? Like at the time he was 27, I was 23, have no clue what medication my brother's on. After some scans, everything like that, we find out he has glioblastoma grade 4, brain cancer. Not something you're expecting to hear. You're young, you're blessed, you're fortunate. Never thought something like that would happen to our family. And my brother had the most positive outlook for it, in the fact of he found out and he's like, well, they're just going to do some scans and then I'm going to go to the Mets game. I have some tickets with my friends. And it's like, no, we're going to stay here for a little bit. We're going to do some scans. We're going to do some surgery. Everyone's coming to town. We're going to figure this out. He had surgery. They removed a golf ball sized tumor from his brain at 27 years old. And, you see your sibling in the ICU. You see your family just kind of rally around. How are we going to fight this? How are we going to beat the odds and everything? And you start Googling, and that's probably the worst but best thing in the case of, depending on when you're diagnosed in life, of if it was 20 years ago, you didn't have Google, but were you burying your head in the sand and not being realistic about it? Or were you able to be optimistic? So I think there's just different viewpoints, and that's where we found as a family that we wanted to flip the script. So he went into surgery. He was a accountant in New York City and always had to be clean shaven. And he's like, I've always wanted to grow a mustache, and came out of his bathroom and was like, hey, I've always wanted to grow a mustache. And that's kind of how we started Stash Strong. It was organic. It was just, we wanted to do something. We wanted to rally behind him. My mom and I couldn't grow a mustache, but we could support spirits, everything like that. But, 2 days later, he's home reading the Wall Street Journal. Like, how does somebody have brain cancer and they're just home? So it was a long, very long fight for him. Typically, life expectancy is anywhere from 18 to 24 months. He fought it to the day. Unfortunately, he was just 25 months and he lost it at 30 years old. But the entire time, he was so optimistic. He was so amazing. And it's just, you learn and grow. And it's one of those things like, you never want this to happen to anyone, especially your loved ones, but it changes you. And I feel like he always said you can only control what you can control. And like, we lived life to the fullest while he was sick.
Yeah. So this is your older brother. So it's the three of you.
Yep.
You have your younger brother, you're the middle.
So I am the youngest. The youngest and only girl. And then my middle brother, Colin, is 11 months older. And GJ, George John, who is diagnosed, is 4 years older than me. So it's always been the 5 Gurners. It's always just been the five of us, and we would have done anything pre-diagnosis, post-diagnosis for each other.
Gotcha. Okay. So where were you in your stage of life when he first got diagnosed?
Yeah. So I had just finished grad school. Like, I was undergrad. I accepted a executive grad school position. So I was working full time. I was going to grad school 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. I just graduated. I didn't have like essentially a life because I was like, I'm just going to grind. I'm going to do this. It's going to be worth it. I'm going to set myself up for my career and then be very happy, like just live life, like go out and enjoy. So I graduated in May and he was diagnosed in September. So it was just one of those things like your friend, like no offense, you're 24, your friends are going to the bars, your friends are dating, your friends are figuring out their life. And I was like, my family is my life. My family has always been my life, but I didn't blink. I didn't hesitate because I sit back now and my brother was sick for 122 weekends and I was with him for 120. I don't get that time back. And I'm just so appreciative and so fortunate between my friends, my work, everything that I could spend that time with my brother.
Yeah. So you were already grinding when he got the diagnosis?
Yeah.
Or that was okay. So then how did that, and you spent all those weekends with him. So like, what was that shift then in that time of your life?
So like, sorry, I had already graduated. So I graduated in May of 2017 and he was diagnosed September 2017.
Oh, I see. Yeah. You did say
so
that.
I'm very lucky because it's one of those things. What would I have done? If I missed one class in grad school, I went down a letter grade and it's like,
holy shit.
You put that time, you put that commitment, and it's like work, like no offense, this is also pre-COVID, but work didn't even ask me anything. Like it was, this is your family, this is what's going on, like take time. And how many companies are like that? How many companies like support you? Like Colin's company was amazing, supported me. My company was amazing. Like, I don't know how people would do it. And it's also the difference of Family Medical Leave Act because my parents were still alive. They're technically taking responsibility of him. And we couldn't apply for FMLA to take care of him. But it's like, how do you have two people driving around, taking the treatments, like doing everything? It's just, you take a minute and you stop and you breathe and you think about all that goes into a sickness, a family, work, and everything like that.
I ran into that when my wife was first diagnosed. We were out in California. I was working in Silicon Valley at the time. And I was like, we have no family out here. I have 3 really young kids.
Yeah.
2 of them were in school. And my wife was about to undergo chemo and surgeries and treatments. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I have no options.
Yeah.
Except FMLA, which wasn't enough to even pay for our rent out there. And I had to, I took that up with the company and they did step up, which was awesome. But it broke my heart to think that there's so many people who have to choose between supporting and being there physically present for somebody and supporting financially. And it's like the two they're not mutually exclusive. Like your bills go up even more when you have all this treatment and everything. So it's like when you need the money the most, it's like when you can't work. Yeah. It's so fucked up.
Yeah.
So you spent, it sounds like almost every single weekend with him. What did your life look like as from the time that he was diagnosed until the time he passed away? What did that process look like for you and your involvement with him?
Yeah, so I guess you could say my family could have ran an operations department. So at the time I lived in Buffalo, New York. My parents lived in Binghamton, New York, so upstate New York. My brothers lived in New York City and treatment was in New Jersey.
Oh my God.
So to us, like we sat down as a family and figured out what's important and what do we want. And my brother's one thing was he wanted to live his life as a 27, 28-year-old. And we respected that and we wanted to do everything possible. So treatment was in New Jersey, Monday to Friday. He lived in New York City Friday to Sunday. You know, I would fly in for the weekend. We lived in a hotel. We lived in a hotel
No
for
way.
6 weeks from Monday to Friday. Yep. We were very fortunate, very blessed. We went to a treatment facility for him, and we found a hotel room where we just were in close quarters, but that's all we needed. We went to the beach. We did this and that. But at the end of the day, like, we still had to go back and live our lives. My parents would go home on the weekends, cook meals, meal prep, do laundry, take care of the dog. My brother and I would go with my other brother to the city. We'd spend weekends at home. It got to a point where we were very fortunate with his first brain tumor that he was still able to do that, and he wanted to return to work. So as soon as he was done with his first treatment, he went back to work. He loved working. He would say, I'm an accountant. I'm in New York City. I live in Battery Park. Like, he took such pride and joy in who he was, what he was able to accomplish in life, which I think any of us do. I think CJ, Ashley, like, you're very fortunate. You're very blessed. You have work. And on the side, you have this podcast and you're helping people and everything. Like, you're more than just an employee. You're more than a husband, a wife, a sibling, a child, or anything. Like, we all take pride in certain aspects of our life. And that was GJ. And then after his proton radiation treatment, he went into Optune, which is a medical device where they would send pulses. So he would shave his head, and it was radiation pulses that would go through his brain to try and target and kill the brain cell, like the brain cancer cells. And it was just something that he was passionate about. My brother Colin was passionate, that they were ambassadors, and they'd go around, they'd talk about it, and they weren't each other's caretakers. We were a family. I would shave GJ's head. Colin would shave it. He would take care of him. So we were able to do that for a few months. And then GJ had a second reoccurrence of a brain tumor. That was on the other side of his brain, where it's one of those things, are you lucky that it's in a different spot because you can do more radiation and you can do more chemo, or you're doing it all over again and you know what's going to happen? So again, we went back to living in a hotel for 6 weeks, traveling and everything, except the second tumor was learning how to use a fork and a knife as a 29-year-old. And it's like, nobody prepares you for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part, is you look at your brother who used to travel on the subway, who used to live his life, who was so independent, and now he's using a fork and a knife and we're helping him, but he was so determined that he was going to get back to work, that he was going to be himself regardless of his second brain tumor reoccurrence. And again, we traveled, we did whatever. We went to Ireland. He went with my dad and my brother to Germany. Like, we weren't going to let a minute go by that we weren't living life, because you never know, especially getting a second reoccurrence. So, again, I was living in Buffalo. I knew I wanted to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. Jeej was doing good. I moved to Charlotte in August 2019. Moved down there. The next day, my mom called and she's like, we're checking him into the hospital. So it's like, you decide for so many months of, like, not necessarily putting my life on hold, but playing it safe in the sense of, like, I want to be by my family. I can't move that far away. I don't want to. It's not I can't. I don't want to. I don't want to miss a single minute. The minute my mom called me, I packed my bags and I flew. I flew to New York City, and we had to pick, when we were at the hospital, between cancer treatment or physical therapy. So which do we pick? Do we pick to treat the cancer, or do we pick to make him stronger to fight the cancer? Because you can't do both.
Right.
And you're sitting there as a family for your 30-year-old brother and say, like, what do? You look at your parents, who, no offense, no parent should ever have to go through that. No sibling should ever have to go through that, especially at our age. But at the end of the day, like, we were going to fight. Like, he wanted to fight, and he wanted to flip the script. Like, he wanted to defy the odds. He was so much younger and everything like that. So he fought long, he fought hard. And it got to a point where, unfortunately, we came to the decision to take him home to hospice because it was better for him. We had done wheelchair training, everything like that. So I remember it to this day. It was middle of September. And we had checked him in August, and he had not left the hospital since August to September because he was so weak.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't do much. Like, his memory went from minutes to seconds, and
Holy shit.
you saw him in front of you, and it's like your brother that you grow up, that you look up to and everything, to just change in front of your eyes was probably the worst part, is that you see him and like he's there, but like he doesn't remember it. And I think that's the hardest part. So we were very fortunate that there was a physical therapist who said, why don't you guys go outside, Central Park, go do wheelchair training, everything like that. And we went out, we took photos as a family. We were blessed. We went back into the hospital room. We said goodbye. I love you. Last words we said. My mom and I were going back to our house upstate New York to prep it for hospice. My brother Colin had plans in Toronto, and my dad was going to do a weekend of dumplings and like food that GJ wanted. So we were just like, okay, like we're good. We've accepted it. And we had a call at like 4 or 5 a.m. He's having uncontrollable seizures. What should we do? And it was just like, what do you mean? Like, I remember I was down the hall at our house and my mom's just like yelling, like, just like, I don't know what to do. We haven't had these discussions type of thing. And it's like, we're 4 hours away, like 4 hours. We're like, just intubate him. Like, we'll be there as quickly as we can. Call my brother. He's on a plane. Like, it just was like, it was like a nightmare type of thing. So we're driving and we get to the hospital. We had to put him in a medically induced coma to figure out what was the best treatment. And we did a CT scan and there was just tumors all over his brain. And it was just the fact of like, there was nothing else to do. Like, we tried our hardest and he fought his hardest, but it was just, there's nothing more we could do. So we decided, unfortunately, even though we wanted to take him home for hospice, we couldn't do that. But I know to this day, like, there's a reason that physical therapist let us go out to Central Park for wheelchair training. There's a reason we left his room and we said, I love you. Those were our last words that we said. Each one of us said it for a reason. And it may sound terrible, but not everyone gets that. Like, you never know when you leave someone, if I love you or this, that, and the next thing. And it happened so quickly. Like, we thought we didn't have the discussion of like, being prepped for that. But it's hard. There's some days I can talk about it, not utter a tear, not have my voice shake right now. But it just is, it's life. And that's the thing is, nobody prepares you. Nobody prepares you when you Google or when you go on social media and you see stuff. Like, you're never going to be prepared. You're never going to have a day where you can actually talk about your wife, your mom, your XYZ of what your story is, because each day it's something different.
Yeah. That's that hits me hard. I think about, obviously the circumstances were different, but it came on so fast with my wife in some ways, and in some ways I was like, oh, but it didn't.
No, I feel like it came on so fast. It's
so fast. So 2020, she had been fighting for like 5 years, and it was just like, it'd pop up, you fight it, pop up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was another normal scan, and they were like, I remember going in for the results in early 2020.
Anxiety. Have you ever heard of that?
No. Oh, yeah.
Anxiety.
Yeah. Oh, I can't have a phone ring without getting anxiety now.
Yeah.
Because every time my wife's phone rang, it was bad news.
Yep.
She failed every scan for 5 years. Every 3 months we would have a new diagnosis. So, and they did it, and they only do, well, this is audio, but so they only do like chin down for her. So they're checking for organs because it was in her liver and her spine at that point. And the one scan, all of a sudden, it went from liver and spine to every organ in her body. It was lungs, liver, bowels, spine, chest, ribs, everywhere. And then they told us, they're like, we don't know how this happened, but we caught part of your brain. And they're like, and we see something and we need to take a scan. And she had 17 tumors in her brain. So we had the conversation with the kids, it was like, it was the summer, or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was the end of the summer. It was like August or September. Yeah. And we're going to, mommy's going to get through the holidays, and then 2021 is probably going to be the time that we lose her. And then we had our family photo session, and she was acting really weird, really on edge. And I didn't quite know why. And then it was like 4 days later or a week later, she was in hospice, and then she was gone. And I remember that Thursday, it was a Thursday night. She had one more brain radiation after a week and a half. And I remember her like getting really emotional that night. And she wasn't one to get emotional, and telling me like, she said a lot of stuff to me, and she like started singing our song together. And she was just like, I think this is it. And I could not handle it. I was like, what are you talking about? So I woke up Friday. Her, Ashley's dad came over because she was just like, I'm in so much pain. He came over, saw her, immediately started crying. And he took me downstairs, and it was like that same thing. He was like, it's time. And I was so in the mode of like, I have to get the family here, making sure everybody said their goodbye, that I never really sat down and said goodbye to her.
Yep.
And I'm haunted by it. And I know that was a very long story, but it was to bring me to the point of like that sense that this woman let you guys say goodbye, but you didn't know you were saying goodbye. It's so fucking haunting to like not have that closure, you know?
Like, are you, and I feel like our family has different viewpoints of this when he was sick, of do you be optimistic or realistic? Of like, you want to be optimistic. You're young. There's nothing wrong. He had just gone for a physical. You're going to defy the odds. You're going to beat this. We can do this. We can do this. And then being realistic. His second reoccurrence, he was home, and it was Thanksgiving, and he kept telling the same story. And I remember him and my brother left to go home for New York City. And I said to my mom, like, he told the same story. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, is it in my head? Did I not hear it or whatever? And it was Colin's birthday. They were going to a Dave Matthews concert. And he was good. Like, in everyone's eyes, he was good. Going to a scan and whatever. And same thing, scan anxiety. I was sitting at work in Buffalo. It was like a Thursday, I think. And I knew he should have had the scan results. Why isn't anyone messaging me and my family? Like, at this point, like, somebody tell me what's going on. And my mom was just like, we'll call when you get home. And your stomach, like, it just is like, there's no right way of saying it. Yep. So that, and then his third reoccurrence was, again, I was in New York City. And I was in New York City for work, and I flew in a day early, and I just wanted to spend time with him, help him with his Optune. We were going to brunch, and he's like, oh, you want to see my office? And I'm like, I would love to see your office. And we go to the front desk, and they're like, sign your name. And he looks at me, and he's like, can you sign my name? And my stomach just dropped. And I was like, okay, it's fine. And like, maybe I haven't been with him. Maybe he's struggling. There's radiation. There's chemo brain. There's your life is, you're not the same person as much as you want to be. And it just was, each time I just felt like I saw it all. And, you know, it hurts, because the same thing I said earlier of, you see them. I look at my brother, he may be in a hospital bed, but you saw your wife, Ashley, you saw your mom, in the sense of like, they're them. And you don't realize, or you don't want to let your brain see the bad or her talking stories or whatever, because it rips your heart out. And it's kind of like, do you protect yourself? Do you not want to talk about it because you want to remember the good times? There's just so much. intriguing of like, what does your brain, what do you process, what do you remember, what do you hold on to, what haunts you in that sense, because there's a lot that goes on.
Yeah, and that's not something that nobody talked to us about it. Like, I never heard anybody talk about how it's always this positive thing of like, oh, okay, we're going to treat it. It's going to be fine. You're going to have treatment. You're on treatment. Everything's great. But it's like when you're living with somebody day to day and you see them constantly, like you said, this treatment of any cancers or disease, really, when you're on something for so long, they start slowly fading away. Mm-hmm. And like for the 5.5 years from the time that she got diagnosed till the time my wife passed away, she changed and I lost her slowly.
Yeah.
And I had pieces of her ripped away from me over the years. And that's fucking devastating. And nobody talks about how hard that is to watch them fade away from you and how your relationship has to change, right? Like you became a caretaker to your older brother. Like that completely flipped the dynamic.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. So Colin always said, I am not his caretaker. I'm his brother. I'm his sister. I'm his parent. And I think from our standpoint of the aspect of caretaker is like, I still look at you the same regardless. I have to help you change or your up tune cap or whatever. I just think it's so hard and nobody prepares you. There's no treatment. There's no plan of, hi, your loved one's sick. Right. This is what you should be expecting. Like we go to school, we pick a major. Like there's nothing in life that prepares you for this because each person's story is so different. Yeah. Your wife fought for 5 years. Actually, like how long did your mom fight for?
Yeah, about I think 5 when you combine the two.
Exactly. Like you could talk to somebody else on this podcast and they could have said, my mom fought for 5 months. Like It's just, there's nothing. And each person reacts differently, lose their memory, lose their hair, lose lose that. And like, also like, how much are you protecting people? Like Ashley, you had a mom, like she was trying to protect her kids from that. CJ, you had a wife. She was trying to protect you, her kids. I had a brother who was trying to protect my brother, my parents. Like each person has such a different story. But at the end of the day, it rips your heart out and your gut and your everything that nobody can be prepared. And nobody's prepared for the after.
Yeah. We're trying to help with the aftermath. The during part, the doctor's got to step up for something.
My mom had somebody who said to her and was like, go outside, go to the backyard, cry, let it out. Yeah. And my mom's like, they were so right because you try to hold it in, you try to be strong, but you can't. Go outside. Literally give yourself 30 minutes, cry session, like let it out because yes, everyone reacts and responds differently, but it just is like, you're allowed your emotions, your feelings, your hurt, because it's not fair. It's never going to be, you'll never understand why or how.
Especially when you're like trying to just like get through each day, get through each appointment, get through all of the medicines that have to be given out. Like you're in this like immense, like you have to be planning. Like you said, you guys were like an operations team, trying to figure out the logistics of everything. And in those cases, I think you do forget to stop and like just feel whatever it is that you're feeling in that moment, because there's obviously so much going on in your brain or in your feelings from one day to the next. And and also everyone is feeling it differently. Like, even though you're going through the same thing, I think it's hard to like, and I feel like I see that now in a different way in which like how each of my siblings like grieved and continue to grieve, and have grown up and how they are the way they are. And it's like we all had this thing happen to us and it doesn't impact us all in the same way. It impacts us all differently, even though the same thing happened. Like we all lost our mom, but
you're different ages, you're different emotions. You're there's no book of grief.
No.
I'm going to write it though. So we'll get it. We'll figure it out.
We're going to try.
We'll compile shit.
Good luck.
Yeah. It is crazy though. I can't really imagine like having that, especially going through all of being that kind of operations team, not to belittle it in any way. And then having that notion of like trying to plan for the end, and the end comes a lot sooner than you had anticipated. Even though you were maybe anticipating it, right? You're going home to set up for hospice, but it was still that thing where it came sooner than you had expected.
I think it's also the hard thing of social media.
Yeah.
So it's also trying to protect our family, trying to protect the narrative or the story that's out there. And are we ready to talk about it? Are we ready to put it out there? And, just posting a family photo versus posting a family photo where my brother's losing his hair and people may think he's balding, or is it this or is it that, versus he has brain cancer, and just putting it out there it's scary, and people mean so well, and how can I help? How can I support? And your friends are going to the bar posting photos, and you're living in a hotel room and everything like that. I think it's just social media is something different. And like I said earlier, Google, and it just is, everything's so different now.
How did you handle your online presence during this time?
Yeah, I think a lot of it in the beginning was quiet. It was really hard before we found out that he had brain cancer. We knew he had a tumor, but we didn't know officially it was brain cancer. We had to wait for the test results. So it's just sitting there waiting and everything. And then, he's got a scar across the top of his skull. And what do we say? What do we do? Do we start I'm drawing a blank of it, but there's like a platform where you can update people.
Like GoFundMe.
Oh yeah.
Not GoFundMe,
yeah, like
but,
Caring Bridge.
No.
Caring Bridge.
Yeah,
Yes,
Caring
thank
Bridge,
you.
Yeah.
Do we start Caring Bridge? And that's where Colin started Stash Strong. So my middle brother, Colin, started Stash Strong on the side. It was his project of starting to write up GJ's story, our family's story, everything like that. And he created a website, created a 501c3 nonprofit, and went to GJ and said, what do you think of this? If you don't want me to do it, I'm not going to do it. With the mustache of him going into surgery, Stash Strong just being a mentality. You can't see, but at the end of Stash Strong is actually GJ. So during our design, like, it's just like little things that we put our story out there, and it started as our family story. And I think the more people that reached out to us, supported us, and said, I know what you're going through, or you gave me hope, really changed. So my social media personally was quiet because I was just afraid. I was afraid to talk about it. I was afraid of the emails or the texts or everything, of having to answer people and say the same thing over again. That's not on Caring Bridge to now we had Stash Strong, that we're going to do something about this, and we're going to support brain cancer research, because there's not enough. He was like diagnosed at the wrong time. There's not enough research. There's not enough treatment options. It's just standard of care. We went to so many different facilities to see what should we do. It's all the same: proton radiation, chemo. We don't have any options. It doesn't matter who we go to. Chemo is chemo. There's only one that like breaks the brain barrier.
Yeah.
So that okay, so that's Stash Strong, and is that still ongoing?
Yeah. So Stash Strong, we actually just hit our 5 years. So we started that in March of 2018. We have funded over 31 different brain cancer research clinical trials and raised $3 million. And
that's amazing.
We do this on the side.
Where's the clapping noise? Come on.
Yeah, really. I don't know which one it is, but yeah, that's fucking awesome.
That's amazing.
So yeah,
that's so good.
We've had this for 5 years, and we run it on the side, and we have full-time jobs. My parents are retired. They help out. We have a board of directors. We have committees, and we're passionate. We're passionate because we've met so many different families, and Stash Strong started as GJ and the Gerner family story, but there's so many more people that we've met that we're able to help out. We met We met somebody who we funded one of the clinical research trials, and she said thank you. Like
Mm,
the most
Wow.
humbling experiences I've ever been a part of.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. We've had two guests now that well they were brother and sister. Their mom died of glioblastoma. And a family that I used to babysit for when I was younger, their dad died of glioblastoma. And
Yeah.
he was, I gotta look this up to like fact check myself, but I remember seeing that he lived beyond the 2 years, and it was like pretty insane. Like at one point, I think he rang the bell, and then it came back. Like it's just, you're right. Like they don't have enough. I mean, breast cancer was like that when my mom was first diagnosed, and now, I think in a way, breast cancer has been fortunate to have had a lot of money raised
Mhm.
to go towards research. It's obviously not enough because people are still dying of it.
Yeah.
But there are so many cancers that don't just have enough. They just don't have enough money and research happening in order to help save people. And you're right, Kelly. It's like some of those people are just. It's like we're getting it at the wrong time, which.
Yeah. And I will say, before Jeej was diagnosed, I had never heard of brain cancer. I was naive.
Yeah.
And I had heard of quote unquote the big names of breast cancer and lung cancer and this, that, and the next thing. So when they said it, it just was like, I don't even know how to process that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been 4 years. No, three. Just over three and a half years since he passed.
Almost 4 years. Yeah, it was 4 years this September.
This September, yeah. Man, what is it with September? That's another September. My wife was September. We've had other guests that it's always been September.
Yeah.
It's that fall, man. They just want to go
Thank you.
in the fall.
If they live in upstate New York, they just want to get out of the cold. They're like, I don't want to be sick for another winter. I'm out.
They're like, fuck, I'm not going through this shit.
Nope. Nope, not at all.
What has this past 3.5 years been like for you? What has been some of the lasting effects and impact?
Yeah, so I think it has, obviously, as you guys know, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. So he passed away September 17th, 2019. And COVID happened January 2020. So you are dealing with the first holidays of Thanksgiving, Christmas, of people reaching out, and you're doing good for the day, and then people mean so well, and they're like thinking about you, how are you doing, and just trying to grasp on, because your table that used to have 5 people now has 4 people at the table.
Yeah.
And just trying to be very appreciative and fortunate for us 4 to be there together, support each other, hold each other up. And then COVID happened, and it was kind of like, okay. Thankfully, my brother and I went and lived with my parents in Florida. So we went from 6 weeks in the hospital together in a small hospital room. I mean, we were there together with all hours. He passed away. We were in New York together. COVID happened. We were in Florida. June 2020, I started a new job and was supposed to be living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Went back to live my life. Colin went back to New York City to live his life, and we just were, what do we do? Like we've had this quote unquote routine of cancer treatment, of this, that, and the next thing.
I was really curious about this, like how that transition back to normal.
Yeah, it rips your stomach up of what do we talk about? Like, your phone's always going off. Like it was when Jude was in the hospital. Hey, taking the subway. I'll be there for breakfast. Hey, he has therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. Like our phones were constantly going off, and we are constantly in communication to, what do you talk about now? How do you fill the void? How do you fill the silence? Especially as my parents went home. And also, you haven't seen anyone. So now you're finally coming out of COVID, and the last time you saw everyone was at your brother's funeral. And it's the eyes, it's the, how are you? How are things? And my mom and I would joke around when we'd go to Wegmans while my brother was sick, is just let me make it through produce. You would see so many people And they meant so well, but it's like, I just want to pick out my lettuce. And they're like, how are you? How are things? And like, people mean so well, but it's like to get out of the house, to face it, to be on social media, to just post something. It's hard. It is extremely hard. And again, how do you deal with grief? There's no book on it. The day after, like that type of thing is you're figuring it out each day. And did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? What can I do better? Type of thing. But it's hard. And I think the hardest part is time goes on and your phone, you used to scroll up and there was the last photo of them. A year goes by, 2 years goes by, and like it takes longer to scroll up. It takes longer to find a photo of or a memory.
Yes.
And like our biggest thing is like on his birthday, we post about him and we're like, share a happy memory, like keep his name alive, keep the memory alive, because there's so much. Like GJ wanted to live to an old age. He wanted to kick cancer's ass. Like that's his thing. Unfortunately, he didn't have a wife. He didn't have kids. So, it's one of those things. Would you rather, or what's the best solution in that aspect? But there's no like little boy that's going to have like my brother's eyes or that carries on his name or something. And I think that's what you have to stop and think about is like, he was 30, he was successful, he was my brother. I'm very fortunate, but also I was just at a work dinner and they're like, oh, do you have one brother? And I was like, I grew up with two. Like, how do you say that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I had a wife, I had a mom. Like, nobody prepares you. And it's just like, you don't want to make other people uncomfortable. You don't want to be uncomfortable. How do you talk about it?
Mm-hmm. So. Do you have any rituals or things that you do to try to reconnect to GJ?
I would just say stash strong. GJ was a very humble, kind, like he would joke around. If you go to Stash Strong, we have a couple documentaries, and he goes, they always say like I'm Stash Strong, but I think they're more Stash Strong than me. Like he just was very easygoing, and like we do this because of Jeej. Jeej was our CFO when we started this. He was incorporated. Like we continue so another family doesn't have to go through like what we did, or they can get more time together, or the live like GJ initiative, or we joke around and we say GJ smile. Like it's just this joke of like you have this like little grin or smirk, and we always say GJ smile. Or he just was somebody that was infectious to be around, had a great group of friends and everything like that. So I think a big part of it is like your legacy and what are people going to say about you when you pass away. CJ, how do you talk about your wife? Ashley, how do you talk about your mom? Like how we talk about Jeej, of like what people still have to say about him, how much his friends loved him, the memories they talk about him. Like I wish to have a fraction of how GJ or how people talk about Jeej.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely ran into that as people were coming up to me after she passed and hearing the stories. I mean, we were crazy close, but there's still stories you just don't hear about until somebody tells you.
Yeah.
And then the thing that really I was felt unprepared for is that whole idea of legacy, because now if I share stories about her, like the pressure that I feel to get it right, because she's not here to fact check it. I'm like, was that the right facts? Did I say it right? Was that real? Like the pressure is so enormous because all I want to do is preserve the amazing human that she was and the amazing things that she did. And that is something like nobody tells you about. It's like, you're now in charge of preserving their legacy.
Yeah.
And our memories
now you
are
just
flawed.
gave me like more anxiety. Jesus Christ.
Okay, at least you didn't start an entire fucking clothing brand based off of it. So
well, I mean, now every time I tell a story, I gotta be worried it's accurate. Like maybe just like
she'll
Is
just
your mom
nudge
tapping
you.
on the shoulder and be like,
like-
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, actually,
No.
that's wrong.
That would be nice. I'm gonna have to go to a medium just to be like, hey, can you find me Ariana and have her fact check this shit for me?
Here I was about to say that, like, I just love when people share stories. Like, I'm gonna be that asshole at my wedding that like makes every bridesmaid tell a story because we should all take every advantage and tell the story while we can, so we don't have to wait until we all die to tell people how we felt about that person. Like,
Yes,
you know,
I definitely agree that not every bridesmaid needs to tell a story, but generally speaking in life, if you have something good to say or some impact that somebody had on you, share it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't do these things enough. We don't understand the impact we have on people, and we're so afraid and we withhold these things. And I've tried so hard to make sure that I always share as much as I can when somebody has impact in my life, because like you said, time is short.
When a coworker recently was like leaving our company, he just called me and like told me the nicest thing, like just the impact I had on them. And I was like, I had no idea. Like,
right. You don't.
Just literally had no idea that like that was.
You don't.
And I was just so appreciative. Like, it was literally like 1 minute, of time. But also I really appreciate when people who have lost someone talk about them and talk about them in the present tense. Like, I was recently talking to someone and I had known that they lost, I think it was their spouse, and they just started telling a story. And like, I knew when they said their name, like that they had passed, but I just was like really like, and then it was like, it made me comfortable. Like, if there was a story that came up, like I could tell about my mom, and it wouldn't be like this thing where they'd be like, oh yeah, like how are they now? Like, well, she's dead, but like, you know, she's great. It's like, I think the coffin's pretty warm, but you know, it's like she's got a blanket or something. But like, those are things that like I like really, I just like really stop and pause and appreciate when people do that, because I selfishly am like, oh, maybe I made them feel comfortable enough to do that. But also just, I like encourage people to do that, because I think it's really good that we keep their memories alive and not talk about them necessarily like in the past tense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious, what are the things that you've done to help process your grief? Where do you feel like your relationship with your grief is right now? It's still early. I mean, 3 years is not long.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it has to do with my brother Colin, leaning on him for support. I mean, we both lost a sibling, and we were both young. Colin and I are 11 months apart. So it's like neither of us have a script for this.
And your older sibling too, right? Like both of your older.
Exactly. Like, it was someone we looked up to. Colin went to the same college, fraternity, accounting, New York City. Like, this is somebody he looked up to and helped him become who he is today. Gigi helped both of us come who we were. While GJ was sick, I have never been a runner. I still say I'm not a runner. It was not my sport, but I found running was like therapeutic. I just escaped work. I escaped everything. One day I ran 8 miles. I was like, I'm going to get credit for this.
Shit.
I'm going to do it. So I ran a half marathon, and they talk about the runner's high of like actually running a full marathon. I'm like, that's nuts. But here I am training for my 3rd marathon.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I'm running the New York City Marathon in November. And we actually have 28 people running for Stash Strong in the New York City Marathon.
Damn.
That's amazing.
So we are all supporting each other. We all have a cause, whether it be brain cancer, whether we have lost a loved one. It's just the motivation, but also like seeing the cheering section and everything like that. I would say that's more of a mental, like, running. I mean, there's days where I'll have a breakdown running, or I will just be like, I don't want to do this, and I'll complain. But it's like, I don't think I ever heard GJ complain during his cancer treatment, and not to compare the two, but it just is like, you can do this, like mind over matter type of thing. But being very open and honest with our family of just, there's days a photo may pop up of a memory, and just like, we talk about Gigi. We talk about Gigi, we have Stash Strong. We hear the impact that we're making with other families. And I think there's no, like I said, there's no script of dealing with our grief, but the running, the talking about it, and not being afraid. So, Ashley, like you said, having people feel comfortable to talk to you about it is just, you find some people who make you feel comfortable to talk about it, and it's not a scary thing. And I think that's what's hard is, do you talk about it? Do you not talk about it? Present tense, past tense, social media, XYZ.
Yeah.
But just realizing that it's therapeutic for you, and you just want to keep the memory alive. And I think that's what helps me, is that he's not here, but if he was here, like, am I making him proud? Am I making myself proud? Like, what am I doing with my life? So I'm running the New York City Marathon 2 days. I will be 2 days older than GJ ever lived. So what am I? I am about to be older than my oldest brother was ever able to live to. And what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to accomplish? How am I going to make myself proud of myself and the time I'm here and what I'm doing?
Yeah, turning 30 was not scary to me. Like, all, people get crazy about turning 30. I was more like, holy shit. Like, this was the age that my mom was, as she was like, had months left to live.
Yeah.
Like, that's just like crazy. Okay, maybe she had 13 months left to live, but still, like, that's just crazy.
What's the timing? What's the timing? What have I done? What do I want to do? Because no one was expecting it. Gigi was at brunch. He shows up in the hospital. They're like, do you know why I'm here? I drank too much. Well, no, but
no, but we should talk about that. CJ, I feel like you talk about this a lot in terms of like the legacy and your next path.
Yes. Yeah, that has definitely been something that has weighed heavy on me. My wife was older by 3 months, and she always lorded that over me. So like becoming older than her was pretty weird. But yeah, that whole idea of like, what do I do now? I think there's a lot of people who go through what we go through, who find like, okay, this is now impacting my life in a way where I want to change the trajectory of my life. Right. I guess it does anyways. Like we become something new. For me, I am not the same person I was before my wife died. Like literally that human has died, and I'm like discovering who I am now. But yeah, and it's that legacy. I mean, you guys started Stash Strong. That's amazing. Like Ash and I started this podcast. I'm now like retired from my career that I had for 20 years in tech, because my path in life now is to do this.
Yeah.
To do my clothing brand and my writing. Like it's all to try to change what I can with the things that I've experienced. So it is interesting how we have these like beautiful tragedies that we go through, and what life can come from them. I can't explain it other than there's just something in us, in our human nature, that wants us to do these things and to help others when we go through these things. But that's beautiful that they're all going to be running 28 people in the New York City Marathon. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I ran it 2 years ago as well. First year back after COVID, it was electric. We had, again, I don't know how many people, but we had a good group running. But last year, just seeing everyone, like you didn't even know, like you
That's
didn't even know
amazing.
people, and they see you in a Stash Strong shirt and they want to cheer you on and they just want to talk to you. And it's like, you just build this whole community, and it's all because of my brother's diagnosis, and because he wanted to grow a mustache and he wanted to flip the script. And we don't want, another sister, brother, parent, loved one going through this if we're able to support it.
That's, instead of the runner's high, you're going to get Stash Strong high.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I like that. Actually, that's what I'm going to use. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I certainly would not get a runner's high after 6 miles.
For the next 4 months, I'm going to say Stash Strong high.
Yes. See? You heard it here first. Trademarked.
I want to ask, I know you said like we talked about, like, are there ways that you connect with him? And you said you connect with him through Stash Strong, but do you ever feel his presence?
Yeah. So, our family's a huge Dave Matthews fan. Gigi got into Dave Matthews, and we still continue to go to concerts and everything. And there's his songs that aren't very popular, let's say, on Stash or on Dave Matthews. And if we hear it, we're like, it's him saying hi. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
he had certain songs, or it's on the radio, and it's just, you know, some people may say you look for the signs or this or that, but we just know, like, there's little things of, you know, he would always tell my parents when they went in and, you know, had their last words, they're like, hey, if you want to do a sign, heads up is a dime for me, tails is mom. So whenever they see like little things like that, everyone has their own beliefs, but
that's amazing.
To us, it's just stop, take a minute, and just look for the signs in life. And whether it be songs, whether it be photos or this, that, and the next thing, like, we feel his presence and we know he's there looking out for us and, like, you know, looking down on us.
That's awesome. We talked about what my wife would do if it was capable. I have yet to have her do what she said.
Did you talk about it?
What is it?
We did. And you would have to know my wife, but the thing that we decided on was that she would have a breeze come across my nipples.
Oh my God.
Because we're just really fucking crazy.
I feel like you just have to really, really like feel that. Like you really.
Yeah. She's like, she told me one night, she's like, you'll know I'm there when you feel me blowing across your nipples. And I was like, all right.
There we go.
So every night I just sit in bed with my shirt off waiting, and there's nothing.
Maybe like when you're on the beach or something, or at the pool.
I don't know. I do think there's been actual signs, but I struggle with that stuff.
Yeah. My mom will have dreams. I don't.
That's amazing.
Me either.
But she all the time, she's like, he's in my dream or this or
That's
that.
awesome.
And I think just each person has their own level. It's not that I'm closed off. Like, trust me, I'm like, okay, good night. Like, I'll take you aside tonight.
Please come to me.
Yeah.
I love hearing the stories of dreams that people have.
Me too.
Like, I feel like that's just like so cool. Because you don't have them every day, and not everyone has them. So it's, you know, there's something to it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like a medium. Have you done a medium, Kelly?
So it's so funny you say that. When I was in Buffalo and GJ was first diagnosed, my family has always done them, but I was a little nervous. I was like, I didn't know what kind of setting it would be. I didn't want it to feel forced. Who knows what's going on or whatever. So it was private. It was recorded. It was like a one-on-one. And she's like, just draw something for your family. Listen, if you know my family, if you've ever met my family, we are artistically challenged. So I was like, you sure you're giving the right message right here, right now? So I took it, and we have in our kitchen, it's G for GJ, George John, C for Colin, K for me, and a photo of the three of us before G was diagnosed. And we just colored our letters. Like, we did whatever. Colin did like shamrocks, G did shading, I had like pink outlines, whatever. And we gave it to my mom, but she absolutely loved it. I mean, we did this at 24, 25, 27 years old, and they look like a 5-year-old.
That's awesome.
But the psychic like told us, or the medium told us, like, okay, go do that. And then there was a time my mom had afterwards, and, you know, they talked about like, oh, I see, you know, somebody there, and like, we just talk about him, and it gave my mom like peace of mind.
So for anybody who is going through this, has gone through this, is there any last parting words you would want to have for them?
I would just say you can only control what you can control. And that's what Gij would say of, he can't change his diagnosis. He can't change, you know, life expectancy. He can't change what the treatment options were, but we lived life. We enjoyed our company. We don't look back. We don't have any regrets. We loved one another. We cared. Did we get in sibling fights? Probably. Did we get annoyed with each other? Probably 100%, as you're exhausted and it's all taking a toll. But just like, give yourself some grace. Give yourself a break, and go outside and cry. as my mom's
Yeah.
friend told her, because you can't be strong for everybody. You can't being strong for yourself and internalizing it or talking about it. Just finding what avenue works best for yourself. Running, walking, reading, friendships, heck, a pedicure, some quiet time. Like, it just, everybody has their own avenue, but I think it's important to find what speaks to you and accept it. Like, whether you need a minute to go on a walk and you may be busy with caring for a loved one or helping out, you sometimes need that time for yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Truer words have never been spoken. Yeah, that's so good. Well,
love it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it, you guys. It was a pleasure. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast.